Welcome to the Are You Awesome Today podcast. I am your host, Stephen Shaner, and you are invited to join us weekly as we talk with successful people who will share with us their personal and professional experiences that have taken them from great to awesome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Are You Awesome Today podcast. I am your host, Stephen Shaner, the Attitude Chiropractor. Joining us today is a good friend of mine, Diane Windingland. Diane is a keynote speaker. She is an author. She has written several books, including Small Talk, Big Results, Cat Got Your Tongue, 12 Ways to Be a Confident Speaker, Public Speaking Lessons from TED Talks, Speech Class for Teens, and her newest book, 100 Tips and Tricks to Appear Confident in Presentations. Diane is also a presentation skills coach and a virtual speech coach. I'm honored to have her with us today. Good morning, Diane. Welcome to the podcast. Are you awesome today?
Stephen, I am always awesome. Thank you for inviting me.
And you know, I love that answer. I should call you every day just to hear that answer. I love that answer. Now, your background is in engineering.
That's correct.
How did you get kind of transferred over to this communication skills passion?
Well, it was not a quick process. I was trained as an engineer and worked as an engineer for only about 3 years. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. And when my oldest son was 14 and we were homeschooling, I thought, I'd really like him to be involved in public speaking because I think it's a very important skill. So I thought, I've heard of Toastmasters, and I decided to check out my local Toastmasters club with my son. And they said that he was too young to join because you have to be 18. However, they would let him give a few speeches on one condition. I had to join the club. So I did. And Toastmasters helped me develop confidence in public speaking, and through the encouragement of other Toastmasters in various clubs and even outside my own club, they encouraged me to go beyond Toastmasters and do some public speaking professionally.
So that was kind of the start of how you kind of made this transition. When did you realize that helping people with their communication skills and presentation skills was a true passion for you?
I realized it while I was in Toastmasters, and I was doing it for free. And I thought, I could do this and get paid. So that was how I started virtual speech coach back in 2012, when I wasn't even really doing anything virtually. That came along later and really exploded this year, of course, with the restrictions and everybody meeting on Zoom.
I know, as you are, I believe, a member of the Speaker Match online system for getting, presentation, getting those jobs.
Actually, I don't think I am.
Aren't you? Okay.
I don't think so.
I know that the situation out there for speakers has certainly changed, where there used to be quite a few, 4 or 5 pages of potential jobs for speakers. Now there's a page, and most of them are virtual. So the virtual presentations skills are certainly important.
Yes, they are.
What tips would you give somebody who is maybe considering doing something like this, being a speech coach, writing a book, doing something like that to get started?
Get started. I know that sounds a little obvious, but let me give you an example. Way back in 2009, I started with the National Speakers Association Apprentice Academy. And I thought, after attending one meeting where they said you should start a blog, the next day I started a blog. And then I didn't know what I was doing. So I populated my blog at first with some of my Toastmaster speeches. And then over time, I thought, hey, I could maybe compile these blogs into a book. So I met with someone, I think it was July of 2010, who was well recognized in the speaking industry. And he said, You need to write a book. It would be your best business card ever. And this was actually July 31st. And at the time, I was homeschooling 3 kids and working 2 part-time jobs. And I'm thinking, when am I going to do this? And he said, well, you already have a blog. It probably wouldn't take you that much more time. You could write it next month. And I said, yes, I could. So I simply worked from 5:15 to 6:15 in the morning, Monday through Friday, compiling my blogs into a book, filling in spots that needed some additional content. And then by the end of August, I'd actually had a short book put together, but I had no clue about how to self-publish. I hadn't even really thought about it. So the day after Labor Day in 2010, I Googled how to self-publish a book. And I just went down that rabbit hole and figured it out. And in October of that same year, just a month and a half later, I had my first self-published book in my hands. And I have to be honest, I'm glad I didn't know everything. You don't have to know everything to get started, because after that, I got a book from the library on how to self-publish. That thing was about 2 inches thick, and it told me all the things I actually forgot to do or didn't know I should do. If I had read that book first, I probably wouldn't have done it. Now, I'm not against having knowledge, but you only need a little knowledge to get started, and you can learn along the way. So my advice is just do it. Take a step out there. If you want to speak, start speaking for free at different association meetings. Put yourself out there. I did that where I made up a title and some content, sent it out to some local Rotary clubs, and offered to speak at their meeting. I think I sent it out to about 20 Rotary clubs, and 7 invited me to speak, actually all in the same month. And from one of those, I got a paid speaking engagement. So that's how I got started.
One of the traps I fell into, as you know, I learned how to self-publish from you. And after I participated in one of the classes you offered on self-publishing, within a year I had my first book published. But one of the traps I fell into was, well, I'll publish when it's perfect. And I think some of us fall into that trap in speaking too. Well, I'll give a presentation when my skills are perfect, or I've written the perfect speech. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a waste of time. Perfection is overrated. You want to aim for excellence, of course, but going from excellence to perfect, number one, is unattainable. And number two, takes way too much time. You can begin to perfect your skills by actually doing it, by experiencing it, by getting feedback. And if you just wait and practice at home without ever practicing in front of an audience, you are losing the opportunity for a lot of valuable feedback. I remember when I'd practice something at home and then I'd give it in a Toastmasters club, and people wouldn't laugh where I thought they would laugh. I thought, oh, that was only funny to me. I guess I need to change it. Or they would laugh at something I didn't realize was funny. And I thought, well, I could play off that. So just get started, and you can start small, start in Toastmasters, start speaking in organizations you're comfortable with, and get the practice, get the feedback, work on perfecting your skills without needing to become perfect.
That's great advice. So I'll ask, have you ever given a perfect speech?
Never. I've never given a perfect speech. There's always something that doesn't quite go the way I planned. But this is advice that I tell my clients all the time. Nobody knows what you had planned. So if you do it a little differently than you planned, you can just act like that's how you planned it, and they won't know the difference. Like if you forget an entire section of your speech, the only problem is if you're using PowerPoint and then you get to the slide and you realized you totally forgot about it. You just, you can make a joke about, I'm sure this has happened to you where you forgot something. It happens to everybody.
Absolutely. And I certainly have never given a perfect speech as well. And I like that advice. In the magic world, one of our rules is never do the same trick twice for the same people. because they know what's going to happen the second time. So
That's right.
our audiences don't know what our presentation was planned to be like. So if we miss that plan, they are not going to know.
That's right.
What kind of advice would you give to people that consider themselves to be introverts?
Introverts are people who have the gift usually of listening very well and also thinking about things before they speak. So, one of the things introverts usually do really well is they create a well designed presentation, one that flows logically, one that's really well thought out. They usually don't just spout things off the top of their heads, so they can have something well thought out. However, if you try to be too perfect, I have known a lot of people who are very good writers. And so they will write out their speeches, give great attention to the detail of how they phrase things. And then when they give their speech, they get really nervous because it doesn't, they feel like they have to read it off of their notes because they don't want to say it differently. That's where I think if you're willing to let go of being perfect and willing to let go of people judging you, that you can come across a lot more conversational. And I think that's probably part of the issue with introverts is that they are not completely comfortable in being in front of people. And I say just do it and practice it, and you'll get more comfortable with it. Put yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations. I'll give you an example. In Toastmasters clubs, they have both a prepared speech portion of the meeting as well as an impromptu speaking portion of the meeting. And although I've grown to love the impromptu speaking portion of the meeting, table topics, at first I hated it because I was called on to answer a question without any preparation, and I would kind of freeze. So, one advice I'd have, because I know introverts often don't speak up at meetings, or if they're called on, they feel awkward, is to actually have a framework that you can use to respond. I'll give you an example framework. I use a framework often that is indicated by the acronym PREP, which is PREP, where if you're asked a question, you can right away state your position on that question, provide a reason, give an example or evidence, or maybe even tell a little story, and then sum it all up with restating your point. So if you have a framework for dealing with things like questions, then you can at least hang your ideas in a framework that is logical, even on the fly.
So I like that. Have that framework, and you can take that framework then into your real life, your business life, your relationships and everything else you're working on as well. But,
Right.
do it the same way, practice it, and have it down pat. I like that. You are all about helping people find their voice and appear confident. In your new book, 100 Tips and Tricks to Appear Confident, give us a few highlights.
Well, the book is divided into 5 sections. The first section is sort of a mental preparation. Then it's how you're seen, how you're heard, how to answer questions and presenting virtually. I personally think the first section on the mental preparation is probably the most important. And there's tips like the first tip is focus on giving a gift. All too often, we get so focused on what people are thinking about us, how they might judge us, that we become, frankly, a little self centered. And that became clear to me once when I was in a Toastmaster speech contest and I bombed it. One of the reasons I bombed it is I was afraid of what people were going to think of me if I bombed it, which just made a bad downward spiral. And then afterwards, after I reflected on what happened, I got a few lessons from that. It was failure. Another point is you can reframe failure as learning because fail stands for first attempt in learning. So my learning from that, the biggest learning was that I needed to get my eyes off of myself and focus on giving the audience a gift. to put my focus on my audience. So that is one tip. And then there's other things that are more physical, how you can physically change yourself to feel more confident, such as doing tactical breathing if you start to feel flustered, or practice power posing right before you give a presentation. And even little things like dressing for confidence. Even if you're on a video call, don't wear pajamas, dress up a little bit. So there are those kinds of tips at the beginning of the book.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing this great information with us. So what are you working on now, and how could someone contact you if they were interested in having a presentation coach?
Well, one of the things I'm working on now is to create more virtual events. And I have just created a virtual event, a full 1-day public speaking online class where people will gain some of the skills and the confidence being able to present. And it doesn't matter where they live. So I am, in addition to virtual coaching, where I meet with people on Zoom, I am also looking at doing some more virtual events. The best way to contact me is to go to my website, virtualspeechcoach.com. And right there on the homepage, there is a link to book an online Zoom meeting with me. It'll go to a calendar. You can pick a time, and you can have a complimentary half hour with me to discuss what your needs are and how I might meet them.
All right, excellent. And all of your books can be found on Amazon, correct?
Correct. They're all on
Excellent.
Amazon.
I've read most of those. I highly recommend any book that Diane writes. Diane, thanks so much for joining us today. This has been very educational. I took some notes here that I look forward to implementing in my presentations. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Stephen, and good luck with your future podcasts.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information about our podcasts and speakers, and for additional educational resources, connect with us at awesomeattitude.net. Until next time, be you and be awesome.